Electronic. You got an internal flow meter, blender. It's all heater. It's all internal. It's digital, and I'll show you when I turn it on. You've got flow rate, FiO2, and temperature. 3 parameters. These are the 2 different types of circuits you have here. So on the NICU side, you've got the low flow circuit here. This goes from 1 to 8 liters per minute, and the unit's going to recognize which circuit is in the unit and lock down those flow rates depending on what circuit it is. So low flow in red, primarily for neonatals only. Then you've got a high flow circuit. These flow ranges are 5 to 40 liters per minute, and again, the unit will recognize which circuit it is and lock in those flow ranges from 5 to 40. Now this will be good for both pediatrics through adults. So I'll go ahead and I'm gonna open up the high flow because I want you guys to kind of feel what it feels like more on the adult side. So when you open up this bag here, you're going to see basically 3 different components. This is your delivery tube here, and inside here is your disposable water path right here, and your vapor transfer cartridge. This is the vapor transfer cartridge that I showed you in that one slide. It's just without the shiny wrapper, and what you got a chance to see was in the inside. This is where all the humidification is created. So it's thousands of fibers, water that's circulating around and diffusing into that membrane. Again, a very small particle size. So what you're going to want to do first is take this out, and you're going to remove these little rubber caps. So these caps don't really serve any purpose, so these can be thrown away. Then what you're going to want to do is insert the vapor transfer cartridge into the disposable water path right here. You see these 4 little little openings here. So you just line up the pegs with the holes. There's no right or wrong way to put this in. It goes in either direction. So it goes in either way. Ooh. So you don't have to worry about which way is up or down. They go in both ways. Now you're going to get your delivery tube here. There's a perforation here to make it easier to open. So you just rip that open there. And with this will only go in one direction. So you've got your holes here. So you just want to line up those 2 pegs with the holes here and press firmly down. You'll hear a little click. That'll let you know that's in there all the way. At that point, your 3 pieces are completely put together. So if we go to the unit here, this is the docking station. So the circuit's going to be inserted into this docking station here. There's a chance everybody see it. So you also notice these little sensors right here. These sensors communicate with the circuit. It's identifying, okay, is it a low flow or a high flow circuit? Depending on what type of circuit, it's going to lock those flow ranges in. It's also picking up on how much the water level is, the temperature of the water. So there's a lot of communication that occurs between the circuit and the machine. To insert the circuit, you're going to see a heater plate here. So you're going to line heater plate to heater plate, and it just goes up over the top. So you're just going to want to insert that down there. And then at that point, you want to make sure that this is down all the way, because again, if it's up like this, and I've had questions about this, they're like, oh, the circuit's not working. You can still close that, but what's happening is that the circuit's not communicating with the machine, and you're going to get alarmed. So you just want to make sure that's flush all the way down, and then you want to close that up. Now you're going to remove the cap off of here. This is the water spike here. So it does take sterile water for inhalation, so it's specifically sterile water for inhalation purposes. And they use this a lot with other types of humidification, whether it be via CPAP or other high flow systems, so the same type of water. Then you're just going to want to spike your water bag. So what's going to happen is as soon as you spike that water bag, you're going to have about 200 milliliters of water flow directly into this machine. You can probably hear it too. So that's the priming process. It takes no more than about 30 seconds for that to fully prime. But this will always house about 200 mLs of water in this disposable water path here. So at that point, you can close that. Your circuit's completely put together. It's really not a complicated process. I know I kind of took my time with it, but again, no more than a few minutes to get everything kind of put together. what a lot of hospitals do, what a lot of respiratory therapists will do, and I recommend, is to go ahead and put your 3 components together, hang your water bag unspiked, and just put a bag over it, just like they would do, pre-set up a circuit for a vent or a BiPAP. They can do the same thing with this. That way, when they know a patient's about to, they're going to put a patient on it, they spike the water bag, roll it down to the patient's room, and they're good to go. So if we look at the back of the unit.
Does the machine have to be turned off for it to be primed first? Or?
Yeah, it has to be in standby mode. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, and I'll go over that process. But so you'd have to be either the machine off or in standby mode in order to manipulate. You've got your air and oxygen gas hoses that connect to the wall. What you're seeing here is a compressor, because you've got some hospitals that don't have piped in air. So they can purchase a compressor from us, so that way all they do is plug into the oxygen and run the air off the compressor. But since we have air and oxygen here, I will go ahead and use that. You've got your electrical outlet. What you don't see is an on and off switch, meaning that when you plug in the machine, you're turning the machine on. There's no on and off switch to the machine. But when you plug in the machine, what it does is go through a self-calibration, and one of the tests it does is a gas source check. So if I plug in the machine without plugging in the gas source, can anybody imagine what would happen? Alarms. It's going to alarm. So to avoid those alarms from going off, we recommend plugging in your gas sources first. As soon as you got your circuit put together, make sure your air and oxygen is hooked into the wall, and then we'll go ahead and plug in the machine after that. So I'll go ahead and get this.
He hadn't done it yet. Only oxygen. I mean, air. No. Think we're good.
Sounds like we're good. All right, so now that we got our gas sources plugged in, we'll go ahead and plug in the unit, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like.
That's our pretend red outlet.
Okay. Yes, I'll pretend this is red because we know the hospital is going to have all the respiratory equipment in red outlets. So that's what it's going to look like when you plug it in. It's going to beep a few times, and it's going to immediately go into standby mode. So you, gas. Do we have gas?
What's one saying it's not working?
Yeah, it might be I'm not sure. See, this is the alarm it'll give if you don't have your gas sources plugged in, or I don't know if you've got the amount of PSI. I can probably run it off the compressor to see if that does anything.
Oh, my eyes cried. Just this one cries.
Turned on. So I've got. I'll go ahead and plug in the machine again.
Now, is that the compressor making a noise, not the actual?
Yeah, that's the compressor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's usually quiet.
So now, okay, so we've got the air plugged in. It's still going.
Is the oxygen going off?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Now we're just running off of air, so and it requires about 40 psi for each gas source. So maybe with the oxygen, it's not providing enough psi. So I'm running just off of air, which you can do. You're just not going to be able to titrate the oxygen. Just like if you were just plugged into oxygen, you obviously won't be able to titrate the oxygen. It'll be stuck at 100%. So when you've got your gas source plugged in and you've got the machine on, it's going right into standby mode. So you know you're in standby mode because you've got an amber light indicating no flow, and you've got the parameters flashing double zeros with a default parameter. So again, it's letting you know it's in standby mode. This right here is signifying that a high flow circuit is in place. So if I had a low flow, it'd say low right above the high. It'll be in red. This is just a letting you know that it's plugged in. It's not an actual level of the battery. It's just kind of a static thing that shows up when you plug in the machine. So again, and again, you've only got 3 buttons to be concerned about here. The button on the far left here is your alarm silence. It'll also dim the screen. The center control knob is the one button to control all 3 of your parameters. So if you want to control your FiO2 flow rate or temperature, it's this one button here. This button right here will get you from standby to run or run to standby. So what I'll do is go ahead and put it into run mode, so we can just press on that. It's going to beep 10 times. And again, this is normal with a brand new circuit, because you got that water that circulates around the gas, so it's going to do that. After 10 beeps, it's going to go right from amber to green, but it's flashing. It's flashing because the actual temperature of the water has not yet reached the set default temperature of 33 degrees. You're still providing flow. So what I tell therapists is that, look, you got a patient in the emergency department or wherever in the ICU that's in severe distress. You don't have to sit there and wait for that gas to warm up to that 30 or 33 degrees.
How long does it usually take?
No more than a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. You can go ahead and put it on the patient, because the main thing is that flow. Short term, it's not going to harm the patient, be very uncomfortable. It's going to continue to heat that gas in a relatively short period of time. So again, because as long as you got a green light, you're producing flow. So just long term, you don't want to be at that lower level of temperature and humidification. But short term, it should be fine. So that's going to continue to heat up. Again, you got that warm the water that's going to circulate around the gas. When it gets to a higher temperature, I'll have you guys feel the circuit. It'll feel warm to the touch. So again, one button. So right now I'm just hooked into air, so I can't titrate the oxygen, but the temperature goes from 33 to 43. Ideally we want to be around 37. You don't have to push it again to lock it in. Flow goes from 5 to 40. But again, you can go left to right. And again, this is an adult circuit, so for adult patients, we typically want the therapeutic flow range is about 25 to 40 liters per minute. So if you got a patient in severe distress, we actually recommend being very aggressive with the flow, so starting at like 30 or 35 right from the get-go, because you don't want to be passive on the flow. Because what happens is when you're say that the patient's maybe requiring 30 or 35 liters, say 35 liters, and you got them on 20, what you're going to end up doing is probably increasing the FiO2, because you're not impacting that worker breathing, so they're still going to be somewhat hypoxic. But if you give them that appropriate flow rate of 35 or 40 liters or whatever they need, chances are you probably use less FiO2. So I've had COPD patients on 40 liters at room air, and not only am I seeing that worker breathing going down, I'm seeing that oxygenation go up. How's oxygenation going? I'm not even getting them supplemental oxygen, but it comes down to that. If you allow more oxygen to take place during gas exchange, you're going to oxygenate, so you're getting rid of all that CO2 that's built up in there and replacing that with fresh gas, so that's allowing that oxygenation to occur. So it does so the circuit itself is good for 30-day single patient use, meaning that if you got it on the same patient, the circuit's good for up to 30 days. So ideally, you probably won't have to worry about changing out a circuit during that patient stay. I know we have some patients that tend to stay in the hospital forever, but majority of the time, you're not going to have to replace the circuit at all. And it does also have patient safety alarms. This is my demo unit, so this guy's a little beat up, but it will tell you what each alarm means. So again, what you saw earlier was a gas fault alarm, and then you got, this is your general fault alarm. You got your block tube alarm, which is the most common alarm. This right here is the disposable water path, the circuit here, and then you got a water out alarm. Again, the water out alarm won't alarm because the water bag's out. It's going to alarm because this is bone dry as well. So I'll demonstrate kind of the water or the block tube alarm, which would be the most common alarm. So
How often do you have to change the water bag out?
it depends on the flow rate. At the highest flow rate on the adult side of 40 liters, it'll probably last a shift. When you're talking on the NICU side, this bag will last for days, because you're only using a maximum of 8 liters per minute. So this bag will last forever on the neonatal side. On the adult side, again, really flow dependent. On the highest flow, probably 12 to 14 hours. You'll have to change it. This is what the adult cannula looks like. It just fits right over the end of this delivery tube. Again, it looks just like a regular nasal cannula. So if the patient's wearing this and it gets kinked, or or gets caught in the bed rail, you're going to hear the alarm and see a audible alarm right here, and that icon, that visual alarm here. When that happens, flow's going to stop. You're obviously going to hear it and see that icon. So to troubleshoot it, just follow it from the cannula all the way through the delivery tube, see where the occlusion is. Once you fix the occlusion, the alarm will clear all on its own, and it will eventually ramp up to that previous flow setting. It's not just going to blast it out at one point, because obviously in a neonatal patient, that could be highly dangerous. For an adult patient, it could be highly annoying for that patient where they don't want to wear it again. So it will just ramp up. This also has the capability, these Precision Flow Pluses that just came out about a year ago, it has the capability of hooking into the nurse call system. So it's that extra level of security for the therapists that are covering like 3 or 4 different units. The nurse that's got 7 or 8 patients. So if they're worried, okay, what if I don't hear the alarm? Well, if it's hooked into the nurse call system, if it alarms on the machine, it's going to alarm on the nurse call system. This also has the capability of hooking into EMR, so it could actually dump data into the EMR system.
Now, is there any battery backup at all on it?
This does have an emergency battery backup of up to 15 minutes. So if you get like a bad storm, power surge, 15 minutes, it'll just provide flow. It won't, pretty much in emergency mode, it'll just provide flow, but it won't provide heat humidification. But it's giving you just long enough to either find another outlet or for that backup generator to kick on. Now we do have a transport unit that is different. It has a different base. It'll have air and oxygen tank holders, a manifold, and a lithium-ion battery that go for 1 hour to be able to transport from, say, the ED to the ICU, or from ICU to CT scan, or wherever you need to go in order for this. Now you can feel the circuit. If you feel the outside of that circuit. So it's
They're like a little more flexible than the normal ones, correct?
yeah. These are really comfortable, and I'll have you guys. I've got plenty of cannulas, so we'll get to try it out here. I'm trying to think. So this is obviously the standby button. So if you got a patient that is being discharged from it, you wean them completely off. You're going to hold this down for about 2 seconds. Now you're in standby mode. This whole system is disposable. Everything. This whole thing is disposable. All you got to do is wipe the inside of this out, 10 seconds, and it's ready to go for the next patient. So a very easy cleaning process. Nothing really to it. So I'll go ahead and put that back in there. And again, if it goes into standby with nothing, just like with a computer, it just goes into sleep mode. It's in sleep mode. Wake it up, just turn that, and now you're back in standby. You get it from standby to run, press on that for 10 seconds, and then you're good to go. Okay, who wants to be the? So I'm gonna have one person